Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 559, 559, Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, we have a lot to cover, so let's not waste any time. Let's just tick them off, is the things that have happened in the past 24 hours. Okay, first of all, this morning we had Kavanaugh. Judge Kavanaugh has sent a letter to Grassley and Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, to let them know that he is not going to be intimidated. He has every intention of showing up Thursday and defending himself from the false charges against him. And he wants them to know that. And he used some pretty strong language in this letter to let them know that the way he feels about it is if he were to step back and not continue to go forward, that it would set a bad precedent, that other people in the same situation may be fearful of coming forward, knowing that they'll be destroyed and they'll never even get a fair hearing. He's not going to let that happen. He is not going to be intimidated. He is going to sit there and defend himself against his false accusations from these false accusers. So he's making it perfectly clear he's drawing the line. He's not backing down. He's all in. And the president gave a very strong backing, as well as the White House this morning, making it perfectly clear that they too are all in behind Kavanaugh. Now, for the most part, we have seen McConnell and we have seen Grassley and we have seen Lindsey Graham and others who've been very strong in supporting Kavanaugh. But, of course, there are a few who haven't said very much. But you have to go farther than that, and that is to actually follow through. And that's what we're waiting for now, is to see if, in fact, Grassley will follow through. Now, as we know, the big cave came when he set the last date as Wednesday. And that's because if Kavanaugh is confirmed after Wednesday, if the vote happens after Wednesday, if it happens on Thursday or after, then Kavanaugh will likely not be able to be seated for the first session for the Supreme Court, which begins in October. I don't know if there's any way that he can testify on Thursday and have that still happen. That is apparently still something that we don't know. But it looks like it's possible that they're not going to be able to get him into that first session if he testifies Thursday or later. So that was a cave on behalf of Grassley, because he said his final day was Wednesday, but he finally capitulated and he agreed to Thursday. Now, I think this is going to turn out to be a huge mistake. And the reason I think it's going to turn out to be a huge mistake is because I don't think that the accuser, Professor Ford, I don't think she's going to testify on Thursday. I think she's going to find an excuse not to be there. I don't think she has any intention, nor did they ever have any intention of having her come and testify on Thursday, because they knew that they had this other person that they were going to drop on Monday morning, hoping that this would be able to delay the hearings even farther and delay her having to come and testify. They're going to do everything they can to try to keep her from testifying, because they know if she comes in there to testify that they're going to have some really good lawyers, likely female lawyers, who are going to cut her to ribbons, probably cause her to break down, maybe even force her to admit that it's all a charade. A lot of people are terrified about this professor, the accuser, being under oath and under that kind of pressure. I think there's a lot of people in high places on the Democratic side who don't want that to happen because they don't know if she can handle it. They don't know if she can handle the scrutiny under that kind of pressure without cracking and blowing up the whole plot. Now, there's another thing that's been talked about out there, and the reason that we're hearing that Grassley had no choice but to delay until Thursday is because he did not have the votes. Apparently he did a count, and he did not have the votes on Wednesday. He still may not have the votes. Now we know Jeff the Flake has said that at this point he is not going to vote for Kavanaugh. He is going to vote present. He is going to vote present. So maybe they're trying to twist his arm. I don't know. We have McCaskill, one of the four Democrats who's under a lot of pressure. she was put under a tremendous amount of pressure because she's in a real tight race, and she was told, given political advice, that her left-wing base is not coming out for her because she hadn't made a solid statement on Kavanaugh. So she was forced 3 days ago to come out and say, okay, I'm not going to back Kavanaugh. They were expecting to see her get a bump in the polls. It did not happen. It did not happen. So now she faces blowback from a lot of Republicans. And that may seriously drive her numbers down and probably lead to her losing her seat in the Senate. But we have these other three who are still watching the situation, deciding what to do. And of course, Mike Pence can always cast a vote as well. So it appears that Grassley is playing the head count game, and apparently what I'm hearing is that he just does not have the votes, which means it's probably Susan Collins is maybe still on the fence. But I think that she'll cave. I think when the moment of truth comes, she will have to vote for Kavanaugh. I find it hard to believe that Susan Collins is going to be able to not do that. Corker, I think, will probably be in the same boat. Not that he's in the same boat as Collins for re-election or holding on to a seat because he's leaving the Congress anyway, but he does have aspirations of being a lobbyist. So there's a lot of things going on right here, and it appears that that is why Grassley caved. It's because he did not have the votes. Apparently he wanted to hold the Wednesday date. He wanted to stand firm on the Wednesday date, but apparently did not have the votes. That's just what we're being told. Now, he's probably not figuring in the Democrat votes. He doesn't want to roll the dice. That's pretty much what we're hearing, is that Grassley does not want to roll the dice. He does not want to have the votes and not have the Republicans he needs, and then have to count on 2 or 3 Democrats and then find out that he doesn't get them and then have the vote fail. He does not want to go have the vote until they've counted the votes and they know they got them. And Jeff the Flake is creating a big problem. Susan Collins might also be creating a problem. And they don't want to roll the dice on these other 3 Democrats. That is apparently is what prompted Grassley to capitulate and settle for the Thursday day. But as I'm saying right here, I believe that we will not see the accuser testify on Thursday. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong. I don't know. My gut is telling me that they do not want her testifying for whatever reason. We already know her story is bullshit, but we also know that she's going to be grilled pretty hard by some probably really good female attorneys. And she might crack under pressure. She might crack under pressure. That's why the Democrats do not want her testifying. So that's probably what was behind Feinstein, Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, sending that letter. So that letter came on the heels of the second story coming out about the second accuser. That is when that came out. So that story comes out, and then within literally minutes, Feinstein's already got the letter to Grassley, telling him, hey, we need to postpone the hearings. There's now a second accuser, and we need to hear what she has to say. There needs to be a complete investigation, so you should cancel the hearings. Why do they want to cancel the hearings so bad? Don't they want to hear from the first accuser? Apparently not. Why not? Then we have this interview with Ronan Farrow, who is the reporter from the New Yorker who broke the story on the second person, and he's being interviewed on CNN, and he right there tells them to their face, right there, he tells CNN that Democrats actively sought out the second Kavanaugh accuser, but he could not name them or would not name them. So now we learn that this second accuser, that the Democrats have known about this person for about a week, they didn't tell anyone on the Republican side on the Judiciary Committee, kept it to themselves, and then they dropped that bombshell. Again, they dropped the bombshell at the last minute. And it appears that this woman, that it was people who came to her. Now, how does that work? How did Democratic operatives, probably people working for Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, the DNC and other Democratic operatives, how did they even know about this woman? Because it appears what we're learning here is it was Democrat activists who came to her. And McConnell says it was Democrats in Congress, meaning probably the Senate, who actually came to the second accuser and were the ones who motivated her to come out at the 11th hour, beyond the 11th hour, to get that second person out there. Why? To make sure that the first person doesn't have to testify. That'd be one good reason. And the second person's allegations, they're even less credible than the first. Mitch McConnell, of course, was giving a speech about this, and of course he said that this is a shameful smear campaign which has hit a new low. He said the whole thing was aided and abetted by Senate Democrats. He's absolutely right. This was and continues to be a complete hit job, a smear campaign, just like they tried to use against Trump. That didn't work either. I've been watching politics for a very long time. I've seen a lot of dirty pool. I've seen a lot of shenanigans. I've seen a lot of things, including the Clarence Thomas hearings and all the rest. I've never seen anything like this before in my life. Never. It's never been this bad. Now this second stunt, like I said, it's been known about for a week. The New York Times has been working on it for several weeks, maybe longer. But they could never do the story, according to the New York Times, is that this particular story here, the second one, was so weak, the New York Times, have refused to publish it because they could not find anyone with first-hand knowledge. They could only find denials. But that didn't stop Feinstein from sending that letter to Grassley to halt the hearings. Didn't stop the New Yorker from coming out and putting the story out. And of course, the activists showed up in full force. We also know that they're all being paid to be there. They're getting their legal fees paid when they are arrested. Clearly, this is a massive political operation. Massive political operation, which tells me it is a crime because it involves members of Congress, specifically Senator Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, and people on her committee. You are not allowed to use government resources to destroy a private citizen. Feinstein and the people on her staff are using government resources to carry out a political operation, a smear job, a hit job, working in association with likely the people at the DNC, other Democratic operatives, probably the rotten Reverend Clinton. It's probably the money coming from the resistance, which is money raised by or donated to the resistance by the rotten Reverend Clinton. That's probably where the money is coming from. We've never found out who is paying these lawyers. Mr. Bromwich says he's doing it pro bono, that he's not taking any payment. How many of you believe that? And the other two lawyers, these two female lawyers, they've refused to comment on how they're being paid, or if they're being paid, or who's paying them. The Democrats are right about one thing: there should be an FBI investigation. There should be an FBI investigation into abuse of power by Diane Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, and anybody on her Senate committee that's a part of this, because they're using government resources to carry out a political assassination. That's abuse of power. It's a federal crime. And there's probably some other federal crimes involved as well, as far as how the money is working. There's probably corruption charges here. You could even have this could even go into a RICO violation, depending on how they look at it. So yeah, the Democrats are right. There does need to be an investigation by the FBI. An FBI investigation into the plot to take down Judge Kavanaugh, to use the resources of the government in a coordinated smear campaign to destroy a private citizen. That's what the FBI needs to investigate. They need to find out who all these people are working for. Where is the money coming from to pay these lawyers? When did this plot originate? Are any of these people in contact or have been in contact with Democratic operatives? Who are they? When did they get involved? Who else are they associated with? How's that money flowing? How's it working? Because you have to be very careful how you move this kind of money. Money raised through PACs, political action committees, money raised through people's political campaigns, money raised through third-party fundraising organizations like the DNC. They're not allowed to use their money for this. And they have to show how they use the money. There could be a lot of corruption and a lot of crime involved in this plot. How does this all get sorted out? How does this all get sorted out? Well, I'll tell you, my friends. How this all plays out with Kavanaugh is hard to say right now. It comes down to Flake, Collins, Corker, and maybe one or two of those Democrats. And until Grassley knows what the vote count is, he's probably not going to hold the vote. We've probably already missed the window for Kavanaugh to be in that first session of the Supreme Court. But ultimately, this issue, my friends, is going to be decided by the voters. We're going to find out a lot of things here in about 6 weeks about this country, about the voters in this country, about the people in this country, regardless of their political stripes. Everyone's watching this thing play itself out. Nobody, no reasonable person in their right mind could be watching this and not know exactly what it is that they're looking at. Yes, we understand that the Democrats, the political operatives, the SJWs, and all those people, anti-Trumpers, and the hard left, we know where they're going to come down on Election Day. But it's Republicans and independents largely who are going to decide the fate of the country at this point. Because if we lose the Congress in the midterms, it's going to be a lot worse than just losing Judge Kavanaugh or any other good judge that Trump may appoint. And he's likely to appoint at least one more. You're going to have this. Can you imagine that the Democrats actually were in power right now in the House or the Senate, or both? This issue is ultimately going to be decided by the people in the midterm elections. They are going to decide the way this country is going to go for the foreseeable future. The people are going to decide this issue. Because the political shenanigans are going to continue. Every day that they don't have the vote and confirm Kavanaugh is another day that the Democrats will roll out another stunt. It could go on indefinitely to the midterms. And the only people who are going to actually be able to put a stop to this and shut it down are the voters. We're going to learn a lot about the country in the midterm elections, about what kind of people we still have in this country. This goes beyond politics. And it goes to the very core of the country. What kind of country we are. Our system of laws, of justice. That's what it goes down to at this point. It's way beyond just this political stunt and all this that's going on. It's much bigger than that. And it's going to be the people in the midterm elections that are going to decide what they think about all this. I surely hope that the majority of people in this country are still sane, coherent, and understand the importance of their vote on Election Day. There was an excellent comment in the comment section from yesterday's video, summing every bit of this up. Patty Willing made the comment, "The irony lurking within the Kavanaugh case is that Christine Blasey Ford has, in fact, been assaulted, and a party was the culprit. Dianne Feinstein pimped her out to fellow party members who have now prostituted Blasey to any and all who can ensure a Democratic victory. The irony lurking within the Kavanaugh case is that Christine Blasey Ford has in fact been assaulted, and a party was the culprit. Dianne Feinstein pimped her out to her fellow party members who have now prostituted Blasey Ford to any and all who can ensure a Democratic victory." Absolutely, perfectly well stated. It's exactly what we're looking at. Absolutely dead on. Thank you so much, Patty Willing. You nailed it. Many people have made many good comments on this topic in the last 2 or 3 days. Some great comments. Don't have time to read them all. So the next big story of the day. The next big story of the day has to do with Rosenstein. And of course, we all have been through this the whole day. It was just full of nothing but from starting out this morning. This first story came out that Rosenstein had apparently verbally agreed to resign to John Kelly. Then that kind of got walked back or debunked. And throughout the day, then it was, Rosenstein went over to the White House and he's been fired. Of course, we know that probably wasn't true because Trump was in New York today at the UN. And so we had all these stories back and forth. Did Rosenstein resign? Did he get fired? Did Trump fire him? Did this guy fire him? Who fired him? Or anything else? Okay, so this is all still being kicked around. But we finally did get Sarah Sanders to make a statement. And she says that Rosenstein and the president talked this morning for a little while before he went over to the UN. But because he's going to be busy for the next 2 or 3 days, that they are going to meet on Thursday. They are going to meet on Thursday. And Rosenstein, I'm sure, will either tender his resignation or he will be fired, because he has clearly not flatly denied the allegations made against him that he was talking about the 25th Amendment, talking about wearing a wire. You simply cannot do that, whether you were joking, being sarcastic, or anything else. It's just not, especially in context and the timing of all the things that were happening at that time. These are not things that you can be talking about, joking about, sarcastic or otherwise. These types of comments, these types of conversations, you just cannot do. You can't even have it. That's why he's going to have to either be fired or resign, in my opinion. Now, Trump may say, well, we're going to have a formal investigation before we actually make a decision. But ultimately, I think they're going to find out that there's enough corroborating evidence that that he did make these statements about the 25th Amendment and about wiretapping Trump. And if he did, regardless of what context, he's either going to resign or be fired. Now, it should not even be Trump that has to initiate this. As soon as this came out, Sessions should have immediately called Rosenstein into his office and asked him if he said those things. And if he did and admitted to them, then Sessions should have fired him on the spot. At the very least, Sessions should have called for an investigation, to be given a report. But we've heard nothing out of Sessions. So we'll find out. But Rosenstein, my friends, as I've said several times in the past couple weeks, is not long for this world. I thought he would make it till after the midterms, but now I just don't think he's going to make it till after the midterms. In fact, again, if Trump asked him, did you say those things, regardless of what context he used them in, And he says yes. And I think he has to say yes because I think he did say those things. He has to resign or be fired. It's just as simple as that. The next man in line would be Mr. Francesco, the Solicitor General. We've talked about him before. He has some good qualities that we've heard about, but he also makes me nervous because he comes from the swamp and he was a Bush appointee. I have some thoughts on him. He certainly appears to be better on the surface. He's argued a lot of cases in front of the Supreme Court in favor of the president's policies. He's been opposed to government corruption. We know that. There's some good things in his history, but there's also some things that make me a bit nervous. But it will be the Solicitor General, Mr. Francesco, that would likely replace Rosenstein. And then I assume after the midterms are over, Sessions will be gone, and we'll have a new Attorney General. We also have this asshat, Michael Avenatti, the lawyer for Saggy Daniels, who says he's about to go public with Kavanaugh accusations about Kavanaugh and this other guy, Mark Judge, being involved in gang rape. Gang rape. So he went from being a high school student who is being alleged to have groped over her clothing some woman, girl at the time. Then we're told that he whipped his pecker out in college. And now we're being told, according to Avenatti, that he and his buddy, Mark Judge, were involved in gang rapes. You know, this stunt is blowing up. In my mind, I mean, it just looks like, to me, it looks like it's blowing up. It doesn't look like it's selling. It looks like it's a disaster. Is what it looks like to me, which is why I can't imagine that Grassley can't find the votes. That's why I say I would have the vote. I know it's a roll of the dice, man, but you know, force Susan Collins and Corker. Force those two Democrats. Force them to vote against him based on this crap show that we've been watching, which is all political stunt, which is obvious to most people. You got to have some confidence at some point. They can't let this thing keep going. Have the vote, man. But Avenatti, if he comes out and tries to make accusations of gang rape, that's a lot more than just fondling someone over their clothing or, you know, even pulling your pecker out. I mean, this is gang rape's a whole other ball game. And who are the other people that are involved in the gang rape? Who would that be? I mean, he's talking about this Mark Judge, friend of Kavanaugh's. You know, maybe there'd be more people involved in that if it's a gang rape. What in the world are we talking about? These are a bunch of rich kids that all went to Ivy League schools. Are there gang rapes going on at Yale and Harvard in the dorms? You know, something tells me, again, I don't, it's hard to believe that Avenatti is part of the coordinated process. I think he's just piling on. He sees an opportunity, so he's going to bring his own little game into the mix. I don't think he's a part of this plot. This seems like it's coming out of left field, and the charges are just really serious. I mean, these are some real serious charges. You better be able to back this stuff up. I mean, he could find himself in a lot of trouble bringing a charge like this. And I wonder if the Senate is going to give Avenatti and this, whoever he's going to bring forward, if he's going to give them the same type of treatment that the last two accusers have gotten, which meaning they've been shown some respect, given the opportunity to testify. I wonder if just because it's Avenatti and his background and who he is and what he's all about, if the Senate will just look at him or blow him off completely and say, look, you know, we know who you're all about, pal. You take your so-called accuser and you can go hit the road, pal. We ain't even going to pay any attention to you. So, and even the Democratic Party may even be cringing when they find out that Avenatti has decided to roll his little circus into town and try to play off of this as well. So it's hard to know where this is coming from or who he's coordinating with or whether this is a solo act he's pulling or exactly what's going on with this. But these charges are much more serious than the other charges he's making. And it's not just against Kavanaugh, it's this other guy, Mark Judge. Now, that changes the equation because now this guy, Mark Judge, has now just been publicly slandered. And he's not a person running for the judgeship. He's just a private citizen who's just been accused of gang rape. Avenatti better be able to prove something, because otherwise this guy Mark Judge is liable to file a slander suit against Avenatti. I mean, Avenatti may have pushed it too far this time. That's what it looks like to me. We'll find out what he's got. He better have something, brother. James O'Keefe of Project Veritas has successfully taken 2 scalps. 2 communist scalps have been taken. This woman, this Allison Raber, who we saw was on the second video, who worked for the Department of Justice, who's also the one who organized that little deal in the restaurant, who ran Kristen Nielsen out of the restaurant. She was the one who headed that up. She has now been fired from the Department of Justice. Scalp number 1. Also, this commie from the first Project Veritas video, who worked for the GAO, this commie named Natarajan Subramanian, he has also been fired by the Government Accountability Office. So it looks like O'Keefe has been successful at weeding 2 communists out. There's now an investigation looking deeper into all the people associated with them, but these first 2 commies have now been fired. They both said that they couldn't be fired. Apparently they can be. We also have this idiot who was our dumbass of the week yesterday, Mazie Hirono. Well, her day in the sun may be setting very, very soon, because I don't think she got the memo. I don't think she got the memo. Of course, she's a dumbass. She has now come out and stated on CNN that she believes that they should, or that the domestic abuse allegations against Keith Ellison should be investigated. She wants the domestic abuse allegations against Keith Ellison investigated. I don't think that's where the Democratic talking point is. She must not have gotten the memo, or she's too stupid to know what the game is. That only Republicans can be attacked for this sort of thing, not Democrats. She just didn't get the Democratic memo. My guess is she's about to get a very nasty phone call from some high-ranking Democrats, including at the DNC, where Ellison is the number 2 man. She might see a slight change in her account balance for her campaign donations for her upcoming election, as the DNC might have withdrawn those funds, taken back from her. She has just became persona non grata with the Democratic National Committee. She obviously didn't get the message, because she thinks Keith Ellison should be investigated. Well done. Michael Moore, his new movie 11/9, which is basically a anti-Trump movie, has been an epic fail. It literally only drew $3 million. $3 million. It opened in major theaters, 1,700 theaters across the country this past weekend. All across the country, 1,700 theaters. Gross ticket sales, 3 million. That's unbelievable. His big film, the Fahrenheit 9/11, did like $24 million in its very first weekend that it opened. Here he only gets 3 million, and he was in 1,700 theaters. They were expecting a redo of Fahrenheit 9/11, but this 11/9 was an epic, massive failure. Totally bombed. That tells you a lot about that red wave, doesn't it? Or that blue wave that might end up being a red tsunami. We also have this unhinged idiot, Mia Farrow, coming out and calling for Clarence Thomas to resign. Keep in mind, this is Mia Farrow, whose own son accused her of abuse. He also told judges in a court hearing that Mia Farrow, had coached his other brothers and sisters, 10 of them, to make up stories about Woody Allen, who's also a freak. And she also endorsed Bernie, at the Democratic National Convention. Mia Farrow should be the last one opening her pie hole on this topic. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.